There are at least 4 major indicators to pay attention to on trying to understand where the market's going. I've had more conversations than I can count in the last couple of weeks on what is happening in the real estate market. And if you want to navigate it like a real estate pro and be able to brag to your friends, pay attention. All right, let's start with the easiest, days on market. This is very simple to understand. How many days is it on the market before it gets a contract that is agreed to? Now, what's interesting is for the last year, for the most part, it's been under about 15 days. The last several months in a row, however, have been under 6. Now, a little insider tip into how this is actually done. Anything that is an input and is measured there's a person behind that. What I've actually seen is that most real estate agents are putting the property on the market on a Thursday, and then they hold the highest and best sometime on Saturday or Sunday, review offers on Monday, and then they market in the system actually on Tuesday. So that 6 days on market is actually a 3 or a 4. And it's not uncommon for real estate agents who know what they're doing to try to reach out to that seller early and say, hey, is there an offer that we could write today, first day on market, that would make sense to wrap this up really quickly? So that 6 days on market, I would say is an actual 3 or 4 in reality. But active days on market or days on market gives you the very quick and easy understanding of how quickly are things moving. As you can see that on the metrics on screen, this is being tracked on a week-to-week basis. And so we can get a really fast indication if things are moving quickly up or quickly down. What we've seen is in the last several weeks, things have for the most part remained flat. Metric number 2 that you need to pay attention to is going to be the average contract to list price ratio. When something actually closes. Now this is a 30 to 40 day lagging indicator, meaning that you don't actually see what something sells for until it's closed. There's a couple of reasons for this, and that's for another video, but understand that this is a 30 to 40 day lagging indicator of something that happened 30 to 40 days ago. Now, for the last year, for the most part, this has been 100% or above 100%. And if I look at the last week, so 4/23, that every contract that was recorded in this week sold at 102.8%. This is a good indication that even in a rising interest rate market, things are selling really quickly and above list price. Hey, if you need a real estate team and mortgage advisor to help you navigate the craziness that is today's market, all of our contact information should be on the screen now and a link below down in the description to jump directly into our calendars. Metric number 3 that you're going to track is actually a mixture of 2 different ones: active listings versus new listings. And the best way to understand this is active listings is going to be on a week-to-week basis how many homes are actually available for sale that can be purchased. New listings are the listings that came on during that same week, how many new ones came on the market. And so I want to juxtapose both of these. On a week-to-week basis, what are we seeing? Are more homes coming on the market? Are the same amount of homes coming on the market or less homes coming on the market? For active listings, I'm looking for how many homes on a week-to-week basis are remaining for sale. So you're kind of juxtapositioning both of these against each other. Let's look at the metrics I have on the screen so that I can kind of give you some insight. Now, if you went back all the way to 2004, you'd see a steadily increasing amount of inventory from 2004 to 2007. It would sit there for a little bit. It would come down in 2012 to 2016, sitting somewhere between like 14 to 16,000 active listings. As of today, on the week ending of 4/23, we have about 3,500 active listings on the market, about a fifth of what is normal. What's interesting here is you can see the active listings has almost remained flat since the beginning of this year. We've had some of the lowest inventory that we've ever had in over 3 decades, and it's remained that way consistently month after month after month. You can see that there's a slight uptick starting in March, that it's kind of going up, but not by much. So let's look at this in comparison to new listings. So if we go back again to the beginning of the year, we had some of the lowest amount of new inventory coming on, right around 277 listings coming on in that week. Since the beginning of the year, however, we've come back up where last week we saw 861 listings. So we've seen this consistent increase of listings that have come on the market, but active inventory remain the same. So you have to make a guess here. If the amount that's available stays the same, but the amount that comes on the market is increasing, would that indicate an increasingly competitive market, the same market, or less competitive? And it should be pretty intuitive here. If you have more and more homes coming on the market, but the amount available per week remains the same, it means that those houses are being absorbed as quickly as they're coming on. So just to define what this metric is how many homes are available divided by how quickly they are being purchased. 1 would indicate that in 1 month there would be no housing supply if nothing else came on market. 2 would indicate if nothing else came on market, you'd have 2 months of supply. That is the easiest way to understand this. Now, this last metric is actually my favorite. This is months of inventory or months of supply. Different realtors call it different things, but it really means the same thing. How many homes are available compared to how quickly are they selling? Now, this is a 30-day lagging indicator. I kind of like watching stuff that's week to week because you kind of feel like you're staying on top of the market a little bit better. But watching weeks of inventory can sometimes make the waters a little bit muddy and be a little confusing. So I like looking at monthly if I can. So I want to look at 2 spans of time. One as far back as our system goes, and then a little bit more recently. If I look at the screen, what I see here is all the way back in 2004. It was an extreme seller's market, and you see this drastic change of inventory going from a seller's market to a buyer's market very, very quickly. Now, what's considered neutral? The best way to understand this is that markets don't become just buyer's market and seller's market. I think the easiest way to think about this is you're listening to a stereo system and you have the dial set right there in the middle at 0. Equal amount of sound coming from the right speaker to the left speaker, or from your perspective, the right speaker to the left speaker. You can take that and you can dial it all the way to the right or all the way to the left. Or you, from 0 to 10 or 0 to -10, you can kind of change it from one to the other. And it becomes more and more and more and more coming from the left speaker and more and more coming from the right speaker. This is the best way to think about a buyer or seller's market. It doesn't mean that just because it's a buyer's market means that it's an extreme buyer's market. Just because it's a seller's market doesn't mean it's an extreme seller's market. The closer you get pegged to the right, the more it's going to be a seller's market. The closer you get pegged to the left, the closer it becomes a buyer's market. And where we are today is we are pegged all the way to the left. It is an extreme seller's market, which means more terms, more things in the contract, and we're getting more and more buyers bidding on these, so sellers can kind of get whatever they want for their property. 6 is what's considered neutral. As you get towards 0, it becomes more of a seller's market. Anything above 6, and the higher that goes, the more it becomes a buyer's market. And so what I can see here is we had a period of time from basically 2012 to about 2017 that it was neutral, not necessarily favoring one or the other. It slightly swung a little bit. Back in 2006 to 2011, basically a buyer's market. And since 2018, it's become a seller's market, and more aggressively so. So let's zoom in on the last few years. Now, if someone told you interest rates are rising and that the market is crashing, I'm looking objectively at the data that we're at 0.9 months of inventory. Again, a reminder, this is a 30-day lagging indicator. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few months. But for right now, nothing has really changed, even though interest rates have risen 1 to 1.5 points. All right, so we have the 4 metrics. Where do I think things are going? Unfortunately, looking at the data, nothing much has changed. And unfortunately, everything is driven by a lack of supply. We just don't have enough homes. We have more buyers than we have sellers. What I've seen is that it has actually affected the lower price points the most. And this is very sad, but also very true, that those at the very bottom of the totem pole get affected the most with the interest rates that are rising. As you move up in purchase price, what someone is doing is they are compromising other areas of their life. Maybe they're not getting quite the car lease that they want to, or they're compromising from a $700,000 property down to a $600,000 property. It's not drastically impacting their life that much. And in the grand scheme of history, interest rates have actually always been in a kind of a neutral area of somewhere between 4 and 7%. Anything below 3% is an abnormal interest rate and only exists because the federal government made it that way. So until we start to see that dial get turned a little bit back more to the neutral, and that's going to take time. It's probably going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 months before we see any big drastic change. As interest rates rise, it will push more and more buyers out of the market, which will in turn create less demand. And even though supply is lower, it will be in less demand, which means that you won't have to compete as hard for it. So until we hit to the end of summer, which is the biggest driver of activity in the real estate market in almost every single market, and we are on the backside of the fall, I just don't see much of a slowdown. I would say look out for anything when we start getting to 21 days, 30 days on market, when inventory starts getting more in the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 active listings range, and we start seeing list to contract ratios at 100% or slightly below 100%. I just don't see a market slowing down. Until next time.